Yeah, but yeah. So Phil is he's in the town, the Caribou. Is he not in their political circles there? I mean, other than because he's not with Susan anymore, I don't think.
No, he retired
Some time ago.
2 years ago, some odd years ago.
Yeah. A lot of stuff from him when he was here.
It's going live in a couple seconds.
Yeah, no problem.
I just want to warn you guys.
Yeah. Be careful what you're saying. No, we're fine.
How's your dog? No. It's good, I guess. I mean, it's kind of doped up.
Oh yeah.
I reduced her medication a little bit because I found she was not even moving, and then she had another little attack. So we'll see. It becomes like your child. Huh?
Here,
Say what's really wrong.
pass this around, you know. It's the deed for the property sale in Frenchville. That's already been approved. You guys just need to sign that.
It seems like there's a lot of traffic there heading up that way. They must be really getting geared up for what's coming.
Thank you. You already signed it.
I can pass it down.
Oh.
I was going to save you a walk. Trying to be nice for once.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often.
No.
We don't have anything written for questions that's come in from the public. There's nothing for this meeting today.
No.
So I'm gonna skip reading that paragraph here, guys, just so you know.
Okay.
Jason, are you live streaming?
Yeah, we're actually live right now, so
Okay.
we just went live.
You know,
a minute ago.
I was gonna just question, can you not supply this to WOWL? Would they?
We're actually working on that right now, and I actually just spoke with Giselle a few minutes ago. We're in the process of getting it so that when we're live here, it goes live directly on Channel 16.
Ah.
Yeah. So it's gonna happen soon.
Payroll one.
Because a lot of people, that's how they get it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Very
It's gonna
good.
make things a lot easier for them.
Yeah.
We did one test last week, and our test was successful. So we just need to purchase a little bit of equipment to put at the studio there. And, yeah. It'll be nice.
So now we need to come up with a something to attract them in there.
Yeah.
We should have a $10,000 prize or something, you know.
Be the first one signing up for that.
How about like a bingo game, you know?
Yeah.
So, something that really be, you know, I mean, you want people
Yeah.
people tuned in. You want people to know what's going on.
Yeah, no, for sure.
You don't like that $10,000 deal, or?
I'd be the first one to sign up. I like it.
To give the money? Great.
Why not?
Awesome.
No, but he didn't say it was coming from you, though. Pass the hat.
That's it. That's it. That's it. Boy, the lake must be
I came to see her yesterday.
lake must be starting to freeze up there. I mean, it was cold last night.
You look tired?
When the wind dies down there, I mean, that's a.
Saw some pictures posted of the ice, but a lot of people are saying it's still thin, you know. But
Yeah. I wouldn't think that you
There's a
wanna.
few in there, did you see? Yeah, there's
Oh,
one.
you wanna get on there.
I would.
I usually don't try to get on till mid-January.
Yeah.
You know, you never. Last year, many years ago, we were at the family camp there, which is just east of Birch Point. And we were just watching out there. It was windy, it was cold, it was New Year's Day. All of a sudden, this Toyota comes riding across, and there'd been some vehicles out there, but all of a sudden, this little Toyota comes riding along, and he, to us, because he was, you know, with 200-300 yards out, it looked like he had stopped. But basically, his front wheels had gone in
Oh,
slightly, and it just stayed there for a few seconds, and all of a sudden, we see it drop a little more. And then all of a sudden,
goes in.
guys are coming out of there,
Yeah.
you know, and the thing goes in, right there, right in front of the camp,
Wow.
maybe 300-400 yards out.
Wow.
Sank right there on New Year's Day. He had hit a drift,
Yeah.
you know, and it was,
Not frozen.
not frozen, and slowly but surely. So they had to dig a channel all the way there.
Yeah. Is
You
that
know,
covered
they had
under
a tractor on shoreline with a chain.
Yeah, pull it out.
They pulled it out. Somebody dove down and hooked it up, and that must mean that we're 12 noon.
Yeah.
Call this meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Because we have no comments or written comments presented to the board, I'm going to skip reading that paragraph. We're going to go right into our articles. Yep.
That out of my nose box.
Is there any public participation in this meeting?
Do we need to have public participation?
Well, I have 3 items that I would like to bring up very rapidly, if you will.
That'd be the board.
Other
of
business.
This could fall right under other business, Dan.
Okay,
Article 2.
okay.
Okay? Article 1, to consider municipal government public policies, public facilities, coronavirus preparedness plan.
So, you know, we all know that the reason why we're here is because we know there's a lot of cases that are happening in town with the schools are closed. There's some cases down at the mill, and we hear of people that are testing positive, and so, you know, Lori talked to me yesterday, and she said, you know, maybe we ought to think about discussing this again as to whether or not we should consider locking down again, protect our employees and not only the employees, but continued operations, so we don't have a disruption of services. As you well know, when we looked at this last March, the big concern was obviously for public health of our employees, but being able to continue to provide services, and so, you know, we decided back then that we were gonna close like a lot of towns did, but do services differently, and that was done via online payments, or people could mail their checks, or we could register cars using a Dropbox, and we developed some methods to allow those transactions to continue, but to not have people coming into the town office. And so, and that, you know, back then we worked and we modified, and the staff, the girls up front, came up with some ways to make it easier, you know, and it is definitely a slower transaction to have to do it through Dropbox and stuff, but at the same time, the goal is to try to keep everybody here healthy, because we're all in such close proximity to each other that if one of us tested positive, you know, we're potentially looking at shutting down for a period of time and not providing any services. And so we're back to that point. The difference between now and March is that we know it's here, right? We also know more about COVID than we did back then. There was a lot we didn't know back then about the virus. So I kind of took the last outline, the bullets, kind of cleaned that up a little bit, took out some stuff that's not really relevant from March's plan. And I put some stuff in here, and I did realize that after I sent it out to you guys that there are a couple of other areas that I knew we need to talk about. And that's the fitness center, how we're gonna have our board meetings, We do have a need for a Board of Appeals meeting in the next 30 days. And we need to figure out how, I have some thoughts. I've already talked to the code enforcement officer about how we're gonna do that. And then a potential meeting area that would better accommodate in-person meetings. And so, with that said, I'll just run through and feel free to, I'm just gonna talk, but if you guys wanna chime in or interrupt or at any point, please feel free to do so. So right now, we're looking at, our public facilities, not allowing the public to come into our facilities. That would mean that all offices are closed to the public. That would include the town office. And of course, that we would accept, we would continue to do business, payments online, payments by phone, payments by mail, payments by Dropbox. And the staff, they really worked with people last year to make it as accommodating as possible. I don't foresee us reducing the number of hours like we did last time. I think we could still keep the same number of hours, and not, whether or not to alternate employees. Right at this time, it's not in this plan. I think last time we kind of alternated employees, day on, day off, day on, day off. That's not being considered here, but I would welcome your thoughts on that. To try to get the word out there, we would update our websites, any links to the main CDC, inform people of our office hours, the building closures. The rec department, I've talked to Sam about activities. He's told me that a lot of rec departments have stopped doing activities. If their schools close, they close. There are no activities going on right now. They have been working towards having ice this winter for people to skate. And we've been planning this winter's ice skating, thinking of a 50 limit group inside, and how that would work if you had a lot of kids and maybe having different cohorts, or if you register for skating, group A would be Monday and group B would be Tuesday. So that way everybody gets a chance to skate and they're not all scrambling to be one of the first 50 in, if you will, on a weekend night for skating or whatever. So we had already been talking about that, but Sam and I did talk about this again. They've already put up the walls. It hasn't been really cold enough until recently to start making ice. But I kind of indicated to them that since they've already put up the walls, to continue to go forward and making ice. The guys are working anyway, so that we would be ready, if we're able to open up. But I think we have to have a discussion as to whether or not, what would be the conditions that we would say, no, we're not gonna allow skating, we're not gonna have people in those buildings, or what would be the conditions upon we would say, yes, we're now ready to allow skating. So that's something that I really like your input here tonight, or today.
So what's the protocol here there? Should we be making some kind of motion to accept this, and then we can have discussion? Because I do have,
If we
make
want
a motion to accept as written, and second, then we can have the discussion.
Okay.
Well,
If we're gonna follow the rules here.
yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I think the public hasn't really seen this, and that's why I'm kind of.
No, we should still go through it.
Yeah.
I want to discuss the skating right now, and should we be having I guess that's been Jason's brought up several times that we have to follow Robert's rules.
Yeah, no, I think he should finish going over it, and then we can discuss each line
After?
item after, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna make notes then, because I'm gonna forget.
So, our town-wide employee guidelines are the same that we've always had from last year. But we do have a COVID screening algorithm that was circulated a couple of weeks ago, and I shared it with you guys. This was done, this came out of the state of New Hampshire, and it was something that was floating around between town managers and town managers, Southern Maine, who were more affected by COVID. Basically, asked Maine CDC if they could make it more suitable for Maine. And so this screening algorithm comes from the Maine CDC for us here. And that's what we've been using. That's what we're going to continue to use as our guide for employees who think they've been exposed and what to do. Emergency services, the safety complex, we're not allowing the public in there. I will update you that we've asked and we've worked with the Bureau of Motor Vehicles for driver's license renewals and tests. It was a concern of the ambulance department with people coming in and waiting in that same proximity of the ambulance department for their driving tests. And so we've worked with them to set them up in the Boy Scout building on the corner of French and 11th Ave. They visited the building. It's open. They're okay with it. So they've agreed that that would be a good location in the interim. We've provided them a key so they could go in, and they're going to basically provide the schedule for when they're going to be there. So when we know when we need to go back and kind of clean up after them, we clean the floors and all that stuff. The rec department is these are the custodians of the building, are the ones that are the point of contact for that building. We did have to go. The building did not have a physical address, and we needed to get a physical address so that MDOT could, motor vehicles could say, here's the new location, it's at 154 11th Ave. So Dave Garrett was able to go into the 911 system and plug in a physical address for that building. So that's been done. Fire department, again, they're in the safety complex. They already know what they need to do, safety, for guidance. Code enforcement and permitting would be by phone, by email, or by mail. General assistance applications would be by mail, by phone, or by email. Sewer department, no public allowed in facilities. They'll follow all the guidelines that we have for them. EMS, they kind of follow our guidelines, but they have their own COVID guidelines for themselves, and they change. I talked to Eric about this yesterday. They change every couple of weeks. They're updated, so we're just going to let them continue to follow their protocol. It exceeds ours, so I have no issue with that. No public allowed in the facilities there. Police department, no change in operations, no public allowed in the safety complex. Public Works had a pretty healthy discussion with Kevin Doobie about this. Kevin came to see me, and he himself was concerned because we now know it's around and we see the impact that it's having on staffing, and he was very concerned about losing his team during a snowstorm and the impact that would have on the community. So he came to see me. He was very proactive. I commend him for talking to me about that. We talked about staff, the masks, wearing the protocols, distancing, the break room, alternating break periods and stuff like that, lunch periods. And, but he also had a good idea, and I did send an email out to the abutting towns, being Grand Isle, Senegat, and Frenchville, where we meet on certain arteries and turn around, like Starbarn Road and things like that, where if the towns, we could agree that if some of us, one town got wiped out by COVID, their staff, they didn't have coverage, that we could at least, rather than turn around at the turnaround point, maybe go to the intersection and come back. We would cover for each other, in the event that, someone would be short on staff because of COVID. So we did put a place mark in with the other towns to maybe have a little Zoom meeting with the town managers and the public works directors to see if that's something that they would want. I think that we would be good to have a little bit of an agreement if we do decide to go that way, just to kind of cover the liability side of things. There's nothing that bans a town from servicing another town, provided that there's a little bit of an agreement in place. And so
these would be more or less our neighboring town.
Just our neighboring towns where we, but and it's Grand Isle, Frenchville, and Senegat.
Yep.
Yeah. So they're thinking about, they're thinking about continuity of services, and that's what this is all about. Board meetings, I'm just gonna add to this outline. Board meetings, we need to discuss how we're gonna continue to meet. The fitness center, we need to figure out what we're gonna do there. A Board of Appeals meeting, and the safety complex, and I know that I did talk to Lori and Doug yesterday, and I talked to Jason here while he was setting up, because, you know, the camera. The safety complex, the fireman's room, the kitchen area would be a good room for meeting. It's a larger area than this, and would allow for more distancing. So that would be an alternate location for board meetings if we wanted to continue to meet in person. We might have to put a Wi-Fi hotspot to get some decent Wi-Fi in that room, so we can stream those meetings. But I would see those meetings being closed to the public and Zooming. The board's gonna have to decide how they're gonna meet, if it's gonna be in person, if it's gonna be Zoom or hybrid in person / Zoom. All of those will present some technological challenges. I think if we do the mixed hybrid kind of meeting, where we can get everybody on, we'll lean on Jason for that help. Board of Appeals, like I said, they do have a meeting. We are gonna have to meet in the next 30 days. And the process for Board of Appeals is such that, you know, the person appealing, the appellant and abutters and people, there's a public hearing process to that. And we're putting a lot of thought behind how that meeting is gonna happen. Can't happen here, okay? If it were to happen, I think it would have to happen at the safety complex. And whether or not we would allow the public hearing to be what we know as a public hearing and open, or if it would be streamed and comments could be submitted in writing ahead of time. So, you know, because there's two sides to that process. The appellant gives testimony, and then the town, the CEO gives his testimony to the Board of Appeals and abutters. So we're thinking about that as well, and I think we're leaning towards having the Board of Appeals meet there, but no public not allowed inside, and maybe just having the abutters, if they do want to come in, if they don't want to submit comments in writing, that they come in one by one, and then leave, and the next person come in. Something like that, I think would satisfy our requirements to keep everybody safe. So that being said, that's sort of the plan that I have. I look forward to your comments.
Okay, so I would look to entertain a motion at this time to accept this preparedness plan.
I make a motion to accept the plan as written.
Second? We have a second. All in favor?
No, we have
Discussion.
discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, discussion.
Because
Sorry.
really,
I know you're ready for that.
well,
yes.
there's question marks about skating, and we
Yep,
need to,
yep.
Yeah,
and I have some questions too here.
So do we want to start from the top bullet point and just say any discussion? No, let's move to the next one.
All right, so starting right off, I do have some questions there about essential services and non-essential services. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
I think that's a bullet point from March, and we talked about essential services and non-essential services back then as saying, if you're essential, you need to be here, and if you're not essential, you can work from home or not work at all. I'm not quite sure that necessarily applies to this right now.
Okay.
I think we're considering all the employees as essential, because we're not telling them that they have to go home or alternate or work from home. We think there's enough work here, and we can work safe. We're all able to distance ourselves enough. The only question as to whether or not we see some value or in staggering or being on one day off, okay, just to kind of mitigate some risk a little bit. Obviously, that would be a risk management tool that would work. But I'm not sure if we need to go that far. I know that transactions here are, one might think that it's actually more work for them this way than it would be to take the customer and come in, because you can process a transaction pretty quickly when they come in through the door.
Yeah.
But when you gotta handle this transaction basically twice, you do the intake and then you gotta, it's a slower process, so it's actually more work this way. So, as far as essential, non-essential, I don't really,
So I would think that a big part of what happens when it comes to work in the office here, I mean, registrations are probably a big part of what they do over there. So if somebody wanted to call in and say, okay, I want to register my car, so they would accept the payment maybe if it's by credit card over the phone? Is that,
well,
how would you handle that transaction?
well, I mean, that's here, and I can chime in, but we obviously, not all customers wanna process a credit card transaction
I understand.
because there's fees associated with that.
Right.
You know, so, somebody calls in, you know, they have a form that they work with, and people can fill everything out and they bring it back to the clerks.
Is that something that can be mailed out to them, emailed out to them?
Yeah.
So the form gets filled in, they send it back, but they still want to call in with a payment.
Well, they'd have that option.
And then what?
Then we put the rest of the transaction in the Dropbox or in the mail, however they want.
So how do you give them back the registration, the new registration? How do you get to them?
What do you guys tape it in the door?
We either have the option, they can come pick it up,
Mm-hmm.
tape it to the door and say, and we'll give them a call and say it's ready.
Oh, okay.
Or we ask them if they want us to mail it, and we'll put it in the mail for that day, and it takes a day or two to get to it.
Okay, good.
Excuse me, how do you handle a cash transaction? Can you accept cash?
It would
It was
basically.
very minimal the last time.
Yeah,
a
because
lot
I'm
of them-
seeing your taxes are coming out and people pay a lot with cash.
Yes.
So just wondering how you're gonna handle that one. Some used to come in with $5 bills or stacks of hundreds of $5 bills, so. I know how some of them are, and I'm just wondering, with this being a lot of people taking their taxes before Christmas, I'm just wondering how you'll handle the cash situation. And you like to count the cash in front of the customer, so they don't say there's a 20 missing, and well, how do you prove it? That's all my concern is on the cash situation, so.
We didn't see any issues with that last year, this spring.
We had a few that paid with cash, but a lot of them chose
It's
to
because
hold
by
the
then,
check.
the tax thing had been over, bulk of your taxes had been collected, but I'm knowing this is the paying before Christmas, and it's hard with the cash.
I would have a comment with that. I think, like, I don't know if this is true, but I would assume that over the years that maybe has changed, you know, a little bit, because we're going more and more debit, but, in a case like this, it's probably unfair, but if somebody really wants to come in here with $3,000 of cash,
And that's happened.
I think that it's not unreasonable to ask them to go to their bank and get a check, or I mean, that's just a suggestion. I'm sure pretty much everybody must have a bank account that they can go and,
Yeah, that or
I
get
mean, this is a
this is a bank cashier
situation
check.
of like a pandemic. I mean, we don't,
I know.
You know.
You'd be surprised how some people like to pay.
I think that if somebody wanted to, it was really
Right.
needed to do it that way, that there's no reason why
I
there
can't.
couldn't be a place that they could put that envelope on the door, and the clerk could come to the door and grab it, open the envelope, count all the cash through the glass, okay, and then go and complete the transaction, put the change and all the, you know, whatever needs to go back in the envelope, and then just kind of hand it back.
You gotta care for
That
that
makes sense.
scenario, because
Yeah,
you'd be surprised how many of them pay with cash.
yeah.
A lot of them did. I know the deposits were quite good.
We need to install a drive-through.
I know that would be a.
Yeah, Dan?
No, I was just, she said
He
you'd
was
be
just saying I
surprised.
pay with cash.
I
Oh.
don't do banks, I don't do cards, I don't do debit, I don't do phones, I do cash, cause it works.
Yeah.
And when I'm out of cash, I stop spending.
Yeah. But I think what Gary said would work, though, if they put it on the, come up with a way they can just count it right in the door, in the window or something.
You don't wanna do it not in front of them. I mean, there's some money missing.
Is that, oh, yep.
Are we?
I was just moving on here if we wanna
Okay,
move
well,
on.
so I would just like to bring out the alternating staff. you know, we see it's happening around us, and no matter what we think of it, right, we need to have, we need to offer services. So, God forbid one of your girls comes in here and says, oh, I have COVID, or then you're all, I mean, it just takes one,
Mhm.
because you're all exposed, and then we have to shut down and quarantine for what, 10, they've changed it from 14 to 10 days?
10 days now.
I personally would pick a couple people and alternate them, you know, one in each department. That's just my thing, because I would not want to close this office down to everybody forever, you know, like for 10 days. I think that's way too much, and the risk is there. The only thing I would add to that is the last time we did that, I did get a lot of, and I'm not pointing a finger at any one person, but I got a lot of feedback from people saying, well, you know, they're out because we're trying to quarantine people and keep them safe, but yet they're out in town and they're at a party and they're here and they're there. So I'd love to see it alternating, but I'd also like to impose or impress on the employees that, you know, we're doing this to keep them safe, to keep operations going, so please, you know.
So what adds a
But-
what adds a little bit of a spin to that is that, you know, we're gonna be down one clerk
Right,
next week,
right.
you know, so we're gonna be down, for a little while, we're gonna be two. And I don't know that we can alternate, but I don't think one clerk in here at a time is gonna be enough. And so what did we do last time? Was it 2 on, always 2 on?
We started back with 2 on
Yeah.
and off.
And so
Yeah.
that'll be, I think in the interim, just because of that, you know, we'll be like that. We'll be limited, we won't be 3 up front, we'll be 2, except for the first half of this week. I mean,
And nobody from the back is cross-trained for the front?
That's the leadership.
yeah, we do have, when, we had one employee go out during this last year, we had one person coming up to help if there was,
No, we couldn't.
but that's when we reopened, Noah.
No, that was during shutdown.
That was during the shutdown? Wasn't during when we reopened it all? No, you're right.
Towards the,
Yeah. So,
It's just thought, because, you know, you have one person, or you get one person back there sick, and then you're 10 days, like, who's doing payroll for everybody else? You know, like, who's handling, you still have employees here too that you have to serve, and they're gonna want their paycheck, and, I don't know, it's just something to consider.
I mean, we have a clerk here and she can, her opinion's valuable. I mean, what do you think, Nat?
no, I'm following what she's saying, she's making sense.
So what would happen then?
Well, I think we're gonna be 2 anyway. And so do we, I don't know if 1 is enough,
Mhm.
you know? When we alternated, we were alternating, always having 2
Mhm.
here. But in the middle of that, we had somebody go out on medical last year. That's how, you know, we ended up getting somebody cross-trained from this side to go there and fill the need. So we still had 2 clerks.
I would say at the very least, that office back there needs to be separated somehow,
Oh, yeah.
because, you know, you pay the bills from there, and you, like, I mean, there's things that come in there that are dated with time-sensitive
Mhm.
stuff, and, like I said, the payroll, like, you can't have the payroll office shut down for 2 weeks. I mean, it's not fair to the rest of the people, and, at the very least, that office needs to be looked at.
One gets sick in there, at this point, they all get sick.
Yeah.
Well, and even if they're not sick, if one has COVID and they're all sharing a space, they
Yeah.
all have to stay home if we're following the rules,
Yep.
you know?
But well, if we do alternate, are we asking that person to go home without pay for that day? Is that,
No, we
that's,
can't. We
okay, I
got-
was gonna
we
say,
got
that's
to-
kinda hard to ask, but,
We gotta continue to pay them.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think we should leave it, maybe, so we don't have to come back later on, maybe leave it to the discretion of Gary to say, hey, if we come up to a point where we realize there's too many people in here and we need to do the day on, day off, to leave it to his discretion to make that decision. I don't know, just, I'd hate to say no today and then all of a sudden something changes tomorrow, you know, and we're stuck.
I think with two in the front, there's enough distance. You know, they can each grab a different till, one on one end, one on the other, leave the middle till open.
Yep.
And their desks are far enough that, and just stay away from each other. I think that would satisfy the concern. I mean, what's the guideline for contact to be considered having been exposed? Is it X amount of time within so many feet,
Yeah,
That's
that's the tough part, yeah.
that's a tough
you know?
corner there. So we'll leave it to the discretion of the town manager? I think
would say
that's
so.
a viable answer at this point. Anybody else?
I mean, do you feel comfortable making that decision, Gary, when it comes to time? That's the thing too.
Well, as long as, like I said, as long as your payroll gets covered and your bills are paid, I mean, if all of a sudden Gary calls and says, hey, all three people in the back are out and nothing's happening here, I'm not gonna be happy.
So, you know, that's,
You know,
when you really start thinking about, you know, well, we cross-train and stuff, and like, we were bringing Amy Russell was coming here to fill the front, well, we're taking her, moving her there, she's coming back here.
Right, you're cross-contaminating
We're
there.
cross-contaminating and through our cross-training, you know, so, and then Amy, well, she's working in PD as well.
Yeah.
So she's down there, coming here,
So it would kind of be a thing where, let's say Amy does have to go cover, well, you send her home for the next day to make sure that if she got infected and she, you know what I mean, she's not gonna go infect the back the next day. It gives her a day to kind of, I know.
at this point, if you can't do anything about the front, that's fine. I mean,
Right.
people unfortunately will, you know, they'll live if they can't register their car for 2 weeks, or, you know, dog license and things that people need. And you're here, there's times that, you know,
Oh, yeah.
you cover, I've seen you do stuff, but, that, you know, it's the back office more, but,
Yeah.
I mean,
So do we have any way of separating them?
well, they're separate in there, I mean, we could put a.
Well, the only two that I see there are the ones in the back office there, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we might have to consider something there, some better separation between
Yeah.
them two. But as far as the front, and I think the other thing too is the amount of phone calls, we're gonna get more calls, so
Yeah.
one person, only having one there taking calls is gonna be,
Yeah, it would be
it's
tough.
gonna be a bit much. Without having to hold people off. Cause the calls don't come spaced out, they come in,
Yeah.
everybody has free time at the same time, right, so.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Okay. What's up? Next item? You wanna discuss anything about the website?
I think it's just
CDs.
informational. We're just
Okay,
gonna-
there's nothing,
Natalie knows what to do there, and just letting you know that whatever we can put as for helpful information and updates, we're gonna put that up.
okay.
People can check that out.
Okay. Town building closures, we just discussed those things. Recreation department? Activities? You have anything there?
So, in the short term, I don't know that we necessarily need to act upon anything because of the warm weather, we've not been able to start to make ice early.
Right.
So we're not gonna have ice for the holidays, for Christmas anyway. It would take a couple weeks of cold and to really be ready to have ice. But, you know, I think going back to what I was saying earlier, I'm of the opinion, if they can make ice, let them make ice and be ready. And in the event that we can open up, we'll be ready. You know, we won't be saying in middle of January, okay, well, let's make ice. It looks like we're gonna be okay. And that would put us out a week or two before we could actually offer that, so.
Yeah. I think with the skating and stuff, I understand right now, we don't have to, you know, there's nothing we can do because there's no skating, but I think we should think forward and say, well, what happens if the ice is there and we're ready to skate and we don't have a board meeting yet? I think until we meet again, we should follow suit with the school. If the school is out of session or remote learning, we shouldn't have skating. And if something happens where the school is back into session, you know what I mean?
So what kind of numbers should, you know, if skating is open, what kind of numbers should we allow in there?
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, it's going to be tough because they're kids. They're gonna skate together. They're gonna, you know what I mean. As much as you separate them, they're gonna come together. So you want to make sure that
So it's just
you got
open skating?
a small enough a number of people that you can control them a lot easier. You can't just leave it wide open. I mean, some nights you might get 10 people, and other skating nights you might get 150 people show up. You know what I
Right.
mean? And controlling 10 people is much easier than controlling 150 people.
Well, then we should establish a number.
So I think we should leave it up to Sam and Gary to come up with a solution of how big is the ice rink, how you know, how separated can they keep people, and what would be a decent number of people on that ice at one time. You know, I think that would be the best.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
As far as the skating, the gym, stuff of that nature, we've got businesses that are closing down because of this COVID stuff, people's livelihoods, and we don't even flinch. So stuff of this nature, as far as I'm concerned, if we're seeing businesses shut down the skating, they're not gonna die. Shut down the gym, they're not gonna die. If their exercise is that important to them, tell them to put on some snowshoes, go for a walk.
Yeah,
That's my stand.
I'm not too far from that. I mean, if it's too dangerous to go to school, too dangerous to go to businesses,
Absolutely.
I think we should be very careful on what we do allow to stay open.
I agree, because you cannot control 30 or 40 kids, and you're gonna have rec department employees trying to say, okay, separate, put on your mask, don't take your mask down, and
Right.
oh, they're, you know, I just, why
It's
are
gonna
we
be tough to
even
control.
considering opening that up? I mean, it'd be nice, I mean, let's put a sheet of ice down in the soccer field and let them go if their parents wanna come with them, but,
They are actually,
Outside.
to do ice outside in the
yeah, so-
backfield there.
you know, and maybe we can just say, listen, if the parents wanna bring their kids skating, you're responsible for your child. You know, the rec cannot be policing this. It's outside.
The only issue with that, though, is are we going to have staff on that ice? Because then we're putting our staff in harm's way by throwing them on the ice with all these people who may or may not follow the rules as far as wearing masks. Even though it is outside,
Yeah.
that's the only concern I have. I think, you know, if we're going to do that and post a sign saying this rink is not staffed, you know, skate at your own risk, that I would be comfortable with. But I'm just not comfortable with throwing a town employee on the ice and saying, you know, good luck.
Yeah, we did that with the parks, right? We put, park is open, you go at your own risk, and the parents will be responsible for their children, and just like letting them skate on the lake or whatever, I mean, it's,
Yeah, you know,
what do you guys think?
so our thoughts are that we would not have indoor skating? Is that how we're thinking? We don't wanna give that responsibility to,
I mean, as far as
To the
right now, if you ask me that today, I would say no. The schools are closed, businesses are closing. I would say no. Let's do like Gary said. I mean, they're there. Have them make the ice, get it ready. You know what I mean? Have the ice there, and then if 2 months from now, which is probably when they'll start skating. 2 months from now, schools are back open. You know, things are different. Let's revisit it. But I think right now, like Dan mentioned, ice skating, the community gym, things like that. I think it's time we start shutting some things down. I mean, the cases are climbing daily, right here in Madawaska. It's no longer coming. It's here.
they're not even tracing it anymore, because there's so many of them. Yeah, Dan?
I don't only think it's time to shut it down, I don't think we should be wasting energy, money, or manpower to be making ice. Just wondering where we're gonna be at in 2 months from now. I can guarantee you that in 4 months from now, we're gonna be in greater handcuffs than we are today with this COVID stuff.
So you would be opposed to even having outdoor ice?
No, I'm speaking specifically about the indoor. I would not touch anything on the indoor rink. If they wanna go ahead and do the outdoor rink, that's fine.
I agree. Why would we waste manpower and money? This is not gonna go away in 2 months.
Yeah.
It's not, and if we made the wrong call, then we'll bus people up to the lake to skate if the ice out here is no good, or, I don't know.
Yeah, no,
It's an expense and work for those guys for no reason,
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, I know there's gonna be a lot of people upset about it, but sometimes you gotta
Yeah.
sacrifice for the
Well,
safety
it's
of
what
others,
it is,
you know
I
what I
mean,
mean?
it's, I don't know.
So, with that, with what everybody says, we're saying no working on the indoor ice, no plan on indoor skating. Let's work on an outdoor rink, and
And then we'll just make it known to the parents that it's they're under their guidance.
I think at your own risk, and the parents can bring their children if they want. I mean, there's no babysitting there, so I would hope that, you know, we try to limit people just dropping off, you know, 10 kids and having them be there. But,
Unfortunately, that happens all too often.
I mean, sometimes, I mean, parents work and the kids need to have a little bit of relief somewhere. But I think for the most part, I mean, the parks where there's always been, there's kids in Bicentennial Park all summer, but there were always parents around and people with them, and
All right, well then that's the way we'll proceed.
do we have, we had signs made, Gary, for the parks last time? That basically said, you know, the park is open at your own risk, can we do the same thing for the ice?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Right.
good.
What is that, townwide employee guidelines, so I think we've gone through all of that. Any questions on that issue?
No, I think they're
We're all set there?
pretty good there. Yeah.
Okay. Emergency services, no public allowed in the safety complex. I think we're all set with that. Yep.
emergency services, we kind of talked a little bit about having like, you know, the ambulance staff's gonna be shorthanded if COVID hits really hard. I don't know, did you have a discussion with Eric?
Yeah, I talked to
We
Eric.
were discussing putting together like a spare list, because you can have community members, you know, as long as obviously they have a good driving record and all that, drive the ambulance if you're shorthanded, and, I just remembered Senegat used to do that, so,
I did talk to Eric yesterday. I know because Ken was gracious to offer himself to drive if, you know, the ambulance department needed him. So he's welcome to. He's like, I can take people for drivers. He said we have a pretty good list of backup drivers already.
okay,
It's
good.
it's EMTs that he needs more. You know,
Okay.
availability of people who would want to be an EMT to fill in here and there.
Because usually the firefighters will drive too if they need a driver.
Yeah. So we're not necessarily in a hard spot right now for drivers.
Okay,
Yeah, but, yeah, I think, yeah, if anybody wants to offer themselves to say, hey, listen, you know, worst case scenario, here's my name, here's my number, I'm sure Eric would be more than happy to write it down.
Good. Good?
do we have like EMTs within the community that, you know, maybe retired now, or doing that wanna,
You gotta maintain
is there a
your
list
license,
of people to pull from, or no?
No, you gotta maintain your license, so
Mm.
once you've retired, it would have to be through neighboring communities. You know, if we had somebody from a neighboring community, we can call on, but
Yeah.
a lot of the retired ones, they,
Okay, just curious, okay.
Okay. Code enforcement permitting, don't think we have much of anything there, we've already discussed that. General assistance applications, where I think we're all, any questions there? Sewer department. I think that's all set too. EMS, I think that's all set. Police department, public works, anybody have any questions on any of these?
I guess the same question for Public Works, I mean, is there such thing, is that such a thing that there's a list of spare drivers, or no?
There's not a lot. Yeah, it's not a
I'm
lot.
just curious.
I mean, we typically, when we need spares, it's for the snow racks, for the hauling of snow when we clean our streets, and if anybody watching and you have a CDL class 2 and you wanna drive, make some extra money, you know, call Public Works. We could use somebody. It's hard to find people, and
You can't just put
even our
anybody in a snowplow either.
yeah, and even I think our contractors, you know, have a hard time finding people to come in and win work. So that's always a need. You know.
I think that's all then.
well,
Some,
we didn't make a final decision on the fitness center though, that was a separate item.
on the fitness center, did we skip that one?
I
Well-
think we covered that under the rec and said
Yeah,
we're
we
shutting
kinda-
that down too.
So close the fitness center.
That's what, yeah.
So while you do that, I just want you to, we do have active memberships, and so what we did last time is we said, you know, we stop your membership here. If you have 45 days left, when we reopen, we'll extend that.
Right.
You do the same thing?
Is there a way to prorate it? If somebody says no, just give me my money back so I can go buy a treadmill, is there a way to prorate that and return?
I think we
I know
decided-
it's work, but, I
I
mean,
don't-
who knows when we're gonna be able to open this again?
I don't know if we necessarily want to give refunds.
Makes things difficult.
It's a bit of a rabbit hole, I think, if we start that. We kind of talked about that our last time.
Does it ever become an issue? Do we have
That-
people that are?
Nobody's ever had any issue last time, for what it's worth. Nobody said, well, I'd rather have my money. I don't know if that's been an issue.
Okay.
Okay, well then I would entertain a vote with some of the minor changes that we have discussed. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Article 2, other business?
Still need to discuss, I
What?
think to that, though, I still, like board meetings, do you wanna talk about board meetings and other business or as part of this plan? Like, how are we gonna meet, Board of Appeals, how are they gonna meet?
Oh, I was just going with your
With
safety.
what I had
complex.
said,
safety
okay.
complex,
That's
yeah.
what I thought.
Sorry, I thought that was part of this
Yeah.
presentation, and I'm good with that, and
Okay,
if we find it's really bad, then we'll talk about Zoom, I guess.
okay, sounds good.
Okay, well then we're moving on to Article 2, other business, board member updates. Go ahead, Dan.
I have 3 things to discuss. At the last meeting, the last board meeting, I asked, at the previous one, I had asked for a certain item to be put on the agenda. It was not put on the agenda, but at our last meeting, Mr. Chairman, you asked me for additional information. I really didn't know how to handle this simply because I had gone through the MMA manual as well as the Selectmen handbook, and it specifically says there that your hands are very, very tight as to how much information you can let out publicly. I did touch base with 3 other selectmen, 2 of them via messenger. I have it all screenshotted here if anybody needs to see it. And the 3rd select person, I just happened to catch on the street. There is a consensus in accordance with the handbook, in accordance with the MMA handbook as well, that we're limited to what we can give out for information. So pursuant to 1 MRSA section 401, citing discipline/personnel will be the reason for a request to go into executive session at our next meeting.
Okay,
Secondly, yesterday, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Town Manager, was there a discussion in your office pertaining to a post of mine on Facebook? That's a yes or no, sir.
did we discuss your post? We discussed,
Mr. Daigle, I will answer that question. I had a concern with the post, and I asked that the chair and the vice chair meet with me to discuss.
Okay, Mr. Manager, do you realize how close to the line that you are on infringing on my right to free speech?
Mr. Daigle,
No, I have the floor, Mr. Manager.
Mr. Chair, I asked you to control this meeting.
Mr. Daigle, if you can make it real brief at this
Yes,
point.
I will
'cause
make it,
Mr.
I will make it very brief. I promise. The post that I posted on Facebook, I did not mention any single names. I did not call out any single person. And anything that came in by way of comments is way beyond my control. The fact that you people discussed it here privately, I should have been in on that conversation. And the very fact that you didn't, there is an intent there, which kind of like points back to something that took place at a previous meeting. Therefore, at this meeting here, I am requesting, by the same statute, under personnel and discipline, I am asking for an executive session at the next board meeting for a discipline type.
Well, you know what, Mr. Chair, if I may,
Go ahead.
I would entertain that discussion in public right now. If it's about me, I'm all for it.
Well,
So I
understand that-
ask any board member here, if you are interested in having a discussion about disciplinary matters over nonsense, please do so for the camera to hear.
No, I believe this is an executive session.
No, it's my choice.
material.
As the employee that you think that you're gonna discipline, I am going to have this in public.
Selectman Boucher, are you constrained to the clock?
Yes, I am,
You
sir.
are. I don't believe that we have sufficient time to take this up. Mr. Chairman, I ask you to put this on the board meeting agenda for the next meeting, and if the town manager so chooses to have this discussed in open air, he has full right to do that. I am requesting for an executive session to discuss this for his protection, according to his rights, according to the MMA manual. So, have you taken notes, sir, to put it on the agenda for the next meeting?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, ask respectfully that this board take up this matter right now, because it's out there for the world to see. Okay, and the people are gonna be sitting there wondering for the next 2 to 3 weeks what the hell's going on. I want this discussion right now for the camera, please. So we can put this matter to bed.
What do
Time
you-
constraints, I
Huh?
can do 20 minutes,
No.
10 minutes.
I think-
Now, this gentleman, and I believe we need a full board to take care of this matter.
Well,
Mr.
listen,
Chairman,
he has just made me aware that we have 20 minutes. So, Mr.
I
Picard wants,
fear that this could
It-
drag on beyond
well, if
20
it drags
minutes.
on, then we'll carry it into an executive session.
No, I'm asking to put this on the next meeting's agenda, Mr. Chairman, and I have that right to ask. to
I
that
have
on
not
next-
taken it off.
Pardon?
I have not taken it off. You've made me aware that you want an executive
Okay.
session for those
Well, as
reasons.
far as, no.
Mr. Picard is saying he wants to discuss this issue now.
No, well, the board is saying no.
The board is not saying no.
We're
We're saying that we
gonna
have
ask
20
for input from
minutes,
other
we
members.
have 20 minutes here, so we're ready to discuss it.
I
So,
mean, listen, I don't, here's the thing, I'm wasn't happy with Dan's post, but having all of this discussion for me is just, you know, here we are again, dealing with stuff that we don't need to be dealing with. As far as executive session, all of us, the three of us, have encouraged him to stop putting things out in public and to stop, you know, and I guess maybe we were wrong because we said, you know, you want to deal with stuff with an employee, it needs to be an executive session. And we encouraged him to do it, now he's trying to do it, and I don't know, I don't know, I understand,
You know-
you don't
You know what,
want people
I
out
just-
in the public,
I just want to have this discussion out loud so the public can see the nonsensical crap that's going on. I'm tired of this. I am tired of this. Okay? And to have the people sitting there wondering what the heck's going on for this next executive session, and we're going to come out of there and they're going to say, what the heck are they talking about? I'm all set with having this discussion right now.
so he
out
doesn't
loud.
want to protect anything other than discussing this at this point. There's no other reason to go into executive session if he doesn't feel that he
No,
wants to.
under the MMA manual, any and all personnel / discipline matters must be taken up in executive session.
So for
Therefore, Mr. Chairman, I stand my ground, and my stand is that I am requesting an executive session at the next meeting to discuss this at length and in detail. For the simple reason that my post on Facebook, there was absolutely no reason whatsoever for the town manager and yourself to be discussing this in your office. you are not the Facebook police, and if you don't like the Facebook posts, you press that little piton that says delete or block. There is nothing that I posted that was illegal, irreverent.
So this board, there were no decisions made. There's nothing wrong with me or him or me and her and him
The
to
very
sit down
fact-
and disagree with the content of the stuff that you're putting on Facebook. There were no actions taken for you to be concerned about other than us discussing the matter. Now, Mr. Daigle, Mr. Chair, do I have the floor?
Yes.
Thank you. We in this organization are sick and tired of you berating our employees on Facebook for your own personal joy.
Did I
No,
berate
Mr.
any
Chair, and let the
employee?
record, Mr. Chair, I have the floor.
Mr. Daigle?
Mr. Daigle, let the record show for the camera that you choose to not come in here and get informed. You choose to not sit down with me to get facts for decisions that you want. You go downtown, you get your stuff off the street, you get people cranked up on Facebook, and then you come in here and you play the victim. You're the victim all the time. I've seen this board twist themselves into pretzels because of you, trying to coddle you. You know what? The public, I've heard so much from the public about your behavior. Okay? It's unacceptable that you choose to berate our employees on social media. They work for you, and you think that's fun? I'm not going to accept that from my employees. I'm sorry. So you know what? If you think there's something wrong with him and I having a discussion, or Lori and I having a discussion, no decisions were made. I brought the concern to them because I work for them and our employees work for you.
Are you done?
I am done. And I am done with your games because you choose to make a show and you think you're going to hide behind the executive session?
Are you done?
Do you, Mr. Chair?
Let him finish.
Do you think you're going to make a spectacle out of me or any of my employees and use the executive session as a shield for your nonsense and people can come out of there wondering what the hell's going on? We're going to have this in public, my friend. Do we make ourselves clear?
No.
You should. Mr. Chair, I
Are you
ask
done?
to be excused from this meeting.
You are excused.
Mr. Chairman, do I have the floor?
Go ahead.
Town manager alludes this to being nonsense. It is not nonsense. The very fact that you had a discussion with the town manager yesterday about my post, you are infringing upon my right to free speech. Again, I will reiterate, and he's so adamant on letting the public know what's going on. I want the public to know that my post never singled out a single person. No name was ever mentioned, and the fact that you two had that discussion without my knowledge is not acceptable. I stand my case to be put on next meeting's agenda to go into executive session in accordance with the MMA manual, and we are going to do things the proper way according to the law. At the last meeting, you spoke, Mr. Chairman, to the camera saying, we don't always do things by the rules. Well, we are going to begin. This is where it's going to start, and it will continue for the duration of my tenure here as a selectman. Third article, if I may.
Go ahead.
Social media, we have a town employee, which is a totally different arena, according to the MMA handbook. We have a town employee that bashed local businesses on Facebook the day before yesterday. This will need to be addressed. I'm not talking about firing anybody, but I am talking...
So was there a business that was mentioned?
I
There was
want
not.
this to be put on the agenda, to be discussed in executive session for the protection of that employee, and I will forward to you the name of the employee at an opportune time to make sure that he is there present, but this will be handled again according to the MMA handbook under the discipline clause, if you will. But please put that on.
So you're
the-
putting how many executive sessions are you looking at here?
I am looking for 3, Mr. Chairman, because we have been given wrong information again about when we go into executive session, and I can attest to that because I sat in on an executive session where we discussed 3 different things, 3 different subjects, which is a violation of the law. You have to exit the executive session, you have to make a motion to go back into executive session, citing the statute and the criteria that allows you to go back into executive session. We have been doing it illegally, and it seems to be no concern of yours. But this is going to change. That's all I have.
Any